Welcome to District Command Central, your go-to source for the latest news and updates on the Washington Commanders. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss a play. If you're a Washington Commanders fan who has been riding this emotional roller coaster for what feels like forever, then you already know how exhausting it has been to watch this team search endlessly for stability, especially at positions that should be simple, routine, almost automatic, and yet somehow always turn into weekly heart attacks. As the Commanders head into their final game of the season, the feeling around the franchise is not just about closing out another year, but about opening the door to an offseason that feels absolutely massive, decisive, and potentially franchise-defining. This is the moment where General Manager Adam Peters steps fully into the spotlight, because his job is not just to tweak around the edges, but to reshape a roster that has been full of holes, inconsistencies, and unanswered questions for far too long. Every position group is under evaluation, every contract matters, and every decision carries weight, but for the first time in a while, it looks like there may be one problem Washington can finally cross off the list, and that problem is the kicker position that has haunted this team like a bad dream. For 2 straight seasons, Washington simply could not get the kicker position right, and that is putting it lightly. It felt cursed. No matter what move they made, no matter how much money they spent, no matter how confident the decision looked on paper, it always seemed to blow up at the worst possible moment. The most glaring example was the decision to hand Matt Gay the largest one-year, fully guaranteed contract ever given to a kicker, a move that was supposed to bring instant reliability and calm to the position. Instead, it turned into a painful lesson about how unpredictable this role can be. Gay converted just 68.5% of his field goal attempts, and when the team needed him most from long distance, he simply did not deliver, making only 4 of his 9 kicks from beyond 50 yards. Those are the moments that swing games, seasons, and locker room confidence, and Washington felt every single miss. As the frustration mounted, it became clear that something had to change, and eventually the Commanders pulled the plug, releasing Gay back in November and officially admitting that the plan had failed. That is when Adam Peters made a move that, at the time, felt like another gamble, another roll of the dice, and another reunion with a familiar face from his past. Peters went out and brought in Jake Moody, plucking him from the Chicago Bears practice squad in a move that barely caused a ripple nationally, but carried a lot of subtext for those paying attention. Moody was not just any kicker. He was the same guy who had already broken Washington hearts earlier in the season with a walk-off field goal. The same guy who had been a third-round pick with massive expectations and even more pressure attached to his name. Now, suddenly, he was wearing burgundy and gold, tasked with fixing a problem that had driven fans insane. At first, the skepticism was understandable. Many fans rolled their eyes and labeled it as just another Peters move, another familiar connection, another former 49ers player getting a second chance. Moody's career had been anything but smooth up to that point, and the weight of being a high draft pick at a position that demands perfection had clearly taken its toll. But sometimes, all it takes is a fresh start, a new environment, and a chance to reset mentally. And that is exactly what seems to have happened in Washington. From the moment Moody arrived, something clicked, and the results have been nothing short of remarkable given the context. Since joining the Commanders, Jake Moody has been perfect where it matters most. He has gone 9 for 9 on field goal attempts, including a 51-yard bomb that would have been a question mark earlier in the season. Those are the kicks that flip field position, silence crowds, and give coaches confidence to trust their special teams unit instead of playing scared. The only blemish on his record was a missed extra point that came on a bad snap with the laces facing him, which anyone who understands the fundamentals knows is one of the biggest mistakes a holder can make. Outside of that single play, Moody has been automatic, calm, and ice cold, even when the pressure was dialed all the way up. There was a moment late in the season that perfectly captured why this move feels different, why this might finally be the answer. In a high-pressure situation, with the game on the line, Moody stepped up and drilled the kick to send the game into overtime, showing no hesitation, no nerves, just pure execution. Those are the moments that define kickers, the moments that build trust in the locker room and belief among fans who have been burned too many times before. It is not just about the makes themselves, but about how they look, how confident they feel, and how the entire sideline reacts when the kicker jogs onto the field. Now, as Washington prepares to face the Philadelphia Eagles in the season finale, the hope is that Moody continues this flawless run and puts an exclamation point on what has quietly become one of the most important late-season developments for this franchise. If he does, the Commanders will head into the offseason with one less major headache to solve, and that alone is a victory. With plenty of salary cap space and a roster that still needs serious upgrades at multiple positions, Adam Peters cannot afford to miss this offseason. Every dollar and every draft pick must be maximized if Washington wants to re-enter the conversation as a legitimate contender instead of a perpetual rebuild. For the first time in a long time, though, it feels like the kicker position might finally be stable, reliable, and boring. And in the world of professional football, boring at kicker is exactly what you want. Jake Moody may not be the flashiest story on the roster, but his impact could ripple through the entire organization, giving Washington the confidence to focus its energy elsewhere and build something real. If this holds, the Commanders might look back at this late-season roster change as the quiet turning point that helped set the foundation for a much brighter future. If you're enjoying the coverage, make sure to smash that like button and drop a comment with your thoughts on the Commanders' latest moves. We want to hear from you. What is circulating right now around league circles feels like one of those whispers that start low, almost ridiculous, and then suddenly gain weight because too many connected people stop denying it. The word making the rounds is that Joe Flacco, who has been labeled in some internal chatter as the principal pass rusher of the Bengals in a narrative that already sounds strange enough to raise eyebrows, has reportedly given the green light to suit up for the Commanders. This is not being framed as a done deal, not even close, but as one of those situations where players' camp quietly lets it be known that resistance is gone, that the door is no longer locked, and that the idea itself is no longer offensive. In the world of the NFL, that alone can move mountains, especially when front offices thrive on reading between the lines and acting before the public ever realizes a storyline is being written. What makes this rumor fascinating is not just the names involved, but the sheer chaos of the fit on paper, which is exactly why people are talking. Joe Flacco has always represented a certain archetype, a quarterback with a cannon arm, a calm presence, and a resume that commands respect in any locker room he walks into. Yet here he is being discussed in the same breath as pass rush dominance and defensive identity, a contradiction that almost feels intentional, as if someone is muddying the waters to keep attention away from the real chess moves happening behind closed doors. The Bengals, known for leaning on pressure and physicality, would never casually let go of a cornerstone without extracting value, and the Commanders, hungry for legitimacy and leadership, are exactly the type of franchise that would gamble on experience if they sense an opportunity. People close to the situation describe this as less of a negotiation and more of a temperature check, a scenario where Flacco's camp simply wanted to see how serious Washington might be. The reported answer, according to these whispers, was serious enough to warrant an internal nod from the player himself. That is the okay everyone is buzzing about. Not a signature, not a press release, but a mental shift. Once a veteran like Flacco signals that he can envision himself in a different uniform, the narrative snowballs. Agents start calling, executives start posturing, and suddenly what began as an abstract idea turns into something that feels almost inevitable, even if it collapses at the last second like so many rumors before it. From the Commander's perspective, the appeal is obvious. This is a franchise desperate to stabilize its identity, to stop being a punchline and start being a threat. Bringing in someone with Flacco's pedigree would send a message to the locker room that the organization is done experimenting blindly. Even if he is not expected to be the long-term answer, his presence alone could reshape how younger players approach preparation and pressure. The irony of him being discussed as a pass-rushing force only adds fuel to the speculation, as if Washington sees him not just as a player, but as a disruptor of narratives, someone whose very existence on the roster forces opponents and media alike to rethink assumptions. On the Bengals side, the silence has been loud. No firm denials, no aggressive pushback, just carefully chosen words and an air of business as usual. That is often how these things begin, with a franchise refusing to acknowledge smoke because they know how quickly it can turn into fire. If Flacco truly has given his blessing to explore Washington, it suggests that Cincinnati might be open to creative solutions, whether that means compensation, a reshuffling of roles, or simply preparing for a future where his chapter with the team quietly closes. Fans hate uncertainty, but executives live in it, and right now uncertainty is exactly what is keeping this rumor alive. The locker room dynamics add another layer of intrigue. Veterans talk, and when they do, information travels faster than any official announcement. If Flacco has indeed signaled openness to the Commanders, teammates would sense it in subtle ways, in body language, in tone, in the way conversations shift. The kind of awareness can change how a season feels long before any transaction is completed. For Washington players, the mere possibility of adding a Super Bowl-winning quarterback injects hope, while for Bengals players, it might spark questions about continuity and direction that no coach wants to answer publicly. It is also worth noting how perfectly this rumor fits the modern NFL media ecosystem. Ambiguity drives engagement, and nothing is more ambiguous than a respected veteran being loosely connected to a new home under a bizarre label that does not quite align with his traditional role. Is it misinformation, intentional misdirection, or simply a game of telephone gone wild? The truth may be less dramatic than the chatter suggests, but the fact that Flacco's name is being tied to the Commanders with any level of seriousness tells us something real is being discussed somewhere, even if the final outcome looks very different for what fans are imagining right now. For now, all anyone can do is read the signs. An okay does not mean a deal, but it does mean willingness, and willingness is the hardest part to secure in a league built on ego and leverage. If Washington senses that Flacco is genuinely open to the move, they may push harder, accelerating conversations that were once hypothetical. If Cincinnati feels the pressure of a narrative spinning out of control, they might act swiftly to either shut it down or capitalize on it. Either way, this is the kind of rumor that does not simply vanish. It lingers, evolves, and resurfaces until something definitive replaces it. So as the whispers grow louder, fans on both sides are left to speculate, debate, and imagine scenarios that range from bold to bizarre. Joe Flacco giving the green light to the Commanders may sound surreal, especially wrapped in the strange framing of pass rushing dominance. But the NFL has a long history of turning the surreal into reality. Until someone steps forward with a firm statement, this remains exactly what it feels like right now. A rumor with just enough credibility to keep everyone talking and just enough mystery to make the eventual truth, whatever it is, feel like a revelation. Thanks for tuning into District Command Central. Make sure to subscribe and follow us for all the Commanders news you need. Until next time, keep the faith and hail to the Commanders.